This is the appointed time. We have a quorum. Does any member wish to declare interest? Chairman, I am the director of a company which manufactures toys and export toys. Any other members? No? Okay, so we need to elect a chairman. Nominations, please. Mr. Jeffrey Lam. Mr. Jeffrey Lam, do you accept the nomination? Yes. Okay, you accept the nomination. Any seconder? Yes. Dr. Lo Wai Kwok, seconds. Any other nominations from members? No? So, Mr. Jeffrey Lam, please. Thank you, members. Maybe we invite the administration in first.
Well,
let me consult the views of members. Do we need a deputy chairman? No, chairman. We don't need a chairman or what? No, we need to have a deputy chairman. Welcome, representatives of the administration.
Perhaps
I'll invite the administration to take us through the bill. Alice? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, members. The existing Toys and Children's Product Safety Ordinance CAP 424 regulates the safety of toys and 12 products called children's products specified in the ordinance. These toys and 12 children's products must comply with any of the safety standards set out in Schedule 1 or Schedule 2. And these safety standards are in line with those adopted in US or European countries or international standards. Any person who imports or supplies unsafe toys or children's products on first conviction will be subject to a fine of $100,000 or imprisonment for 1 year. For repeated offenders, the maximum fine could be $500,000 and imprisonment of 2 years. CNE enforces the ordinance. And the objects of the bill seeks to expand the scope of toys under the CAP 424 so as to regulate the concentration limit of phthalates in toys and children's products. For phthalates, we usually call it plasticizers. And the use of plasticizers can improve flexibility and durability in plastic materials. That is to make the plastic soft. According to the experiments conducted in other countries, it has low acute oral toxicity in humans. The main concern, however, is over chronic exposure via the oral route. That means sucking, teething, mouthing, such products. And these countries have come up with the findings by experiment. According to the experiments on testing animals, chronic exposure to phthalates, and there are different types of phthalates, and chronic exposure to certain types of phthalates would cause reproductive and developmental toxicity in experimental animals. For example, it may harm the kidney or liver, etc. It might result in slow development or incomplete development. These are the findings of the tests on experimental animals. As for the teething, sucking, and mouthing of soft plastic products, children are the people who would do this, and therefore, to protect the safety of children, there must be regulations to regulate the concentration limit of phthalates in toys and certain children's products. The countries I mentioned include EU, Australia, US, and Singapore, and Canada. They have imposed concentration limits on 6 types of phthalates. The Chinese names for these phthalates are quite long, so I will use English. That is DEHP, DBP, BBP, DINP, the 5th type DIDP, and the 6th type DNOP. For these economies, if such phthalates exist in toys and children's products, they have imposed concentration limits on these phthalates. And Australia, for example, it has only imposed control over DEHP and not the remaining 5 types. And to protect the safety of children and to prevent Hong Kong from becoming the dumping ground for products that exceed the concentration, with phthalates exceeding the concentration limits of other countries, we like to ensure that our regime is on a par with those in advanced economies. So we propose to impose similar controls on the 6 types of phthalates. Now, as I mentioned, the current CAP 424 only regulates toys and 12 types of children's products. So we're proposing to expand the types of products under the regulation. And we propose to expand the definition of children's product in the ordinance to not cover only the 12 products in the ordinance, but also other products that are intended to facilitate the feeding, hygiene, relaxation, sleep, sucking, or teething of a child under 4 years of age, and that contain any plasticized material. And this is also the scope of other countries' laws. And we're also going to make other technical amendments and to improve certain provisions. But basically, we're proposing to expand the coverage of this ordinance. Upon the legislative passage of the amendments to the ordinance, we need to make subsidiary legislation that is similar to the standards set out in the schedules, so that the concentration limits of phthalates can be set out in the regulation, and the negative vetting will be adopted in the passing of subsidiary legislation. So much for my presentation. Any questions from members? Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Thank you, Chairman. I think this is a very technical issue to bring us on a par with international standards. I personally don't see any major problem in it. Now, on some general knowledge matters, phthalates, apart from exposure via the oral route, I'd like to know more. Can the administration explain to me whether humans will be exposed to phthalates through other routes, for example, on contact by skin? Alice, we've read some literature in Europe. They have a committee that specializes in conducting experiments in this regard, and they offer advice to the European Union on their experimental findings. The findings are that those children's products should be regulated because, according to their experiments, contact through air or skin will not result in a hazardous situation according to their experiments. Canada also has conducted some experiments which shows that phthalates can be absorbed through saliva, and the studies focus on chronic exposure. So can the administration explain to me the following? For example, children's products like teats or that toddlers may come into contact more frequently. What about other children's products? You know, children like to put everything into the mouth. Should any regulation be imposed on the concentration limit of phthalates in these products? We can't guarantee that children will not put those products into their mouth. Apart from toys and teats, other will we ban other products as well? Thank you, Chairman. For these major advanced economies, in relation to children's products and other consumer goods, they have advanced protection mechanism. Their consideration is based on experimental findings. They look at the types of products to be regulated, and the regulation must be proportionate to the risk level. So the first ground is that it must be children's products or products used by toddlers, and those products must be frequently put in the mouth of the children for it to be regulated. And the coverage, may I read it out again? Feeding. So dummies, teats, and eating utensils, hygiene. They may be the basin.
And then when it comes to regulation sleep, we are talking about bed covers or any mattress, and also sucking or teething, meaning some plastic products that are used by children when they teeth. So these are the products children may be using, and in fact there is not a country that can cover everything. This is because the scope or coverage must be proportionate to the risk that can be imposed. Dr. Loy-Cock. Thank you, Chair. With regard to toys and children's products, especially when these are used, children or babies can in fact come into contact with them through their mouth, and therefore the regulation should be strict. I'd like to talk about packaging. I'd like to ask you for your views on this. Normally, the packaging is such that it is disposed of once the product is purchased and taken home. And it is very rare that babies and children will come into contact with the packaging materials. What is your stance on this? What is the principle for also regulating packaging? Alice. There are two levels. Under definition in the ordinance, children's products and toys do include the packaging. In other words, packaging is defined as toy or children's product. But when we write the bylaw, what should not include phthalates and which should be subject to the maximum level, we are not going to talk about the packaging because the packaging may be just a plastic bag. And on this, we are going to follow the approach of other countries. My understanding is that packaging can include a lot of things. The very thin plastic sheets and even plastic strings and even the ink or adhesive. In Europe and the US, their regulation is different from ours as proposed. Vis-a-vis packaging, can you explain what is the regulation on toy packaging in the US and Europe now? As I said just now, commonly speaking, toys will include packaging and there are different standards. Yes, can we focus on this? There are 6 types of phthalates which are going to be included in the bill. I'd like you to talk about the regulation on these 6 types in the US and Europe. Are they included in packaging? No. So are you going to include these as well in packaging? No. What I mean is the coverage or scope of the bill will include toys and a number of children's products. And these, as defined, will include packaging. But as I said, I will set the maximum limit only in a bylaw. It's just like the present schedules in the ordinance. The maximum limits of different things are set. And in the bylaw or schedule, we will state in what circumstances these should not be present. And they would not include packaging. In other words, packaging is not subject to the maximum limits for these 6 types of phthalates. And that is quite clear, yes? Yes, it's very clear. Dr. Low Wai Kwok, any follow-up? Chairman, when we come to clause-by-clause examination of the bill, I think we should exercise more caution because, according to the explanation just now, there will be regulation introduced on these 6 types, but they would not affect the packaging. I think we need to make sure that this is clear in the bill. Of course, we should strike the right balance. We are very concerned about product safety, but packaging materials can be quite a complex issue. As the chairman was explaining, it's not just a plastic bag. There could be a carton, there will be ink and other painting materials on the carton. I know that is already regulated. And now you seek to increase the control on certain materials. And this may affect packaging. I think you should make sure that this is clearly pointed out so the industry will not be worried. Some people may think that the coverage is too wide so that there will be over-regulating of packaging materials and you may exceed the original purpose of making this bill. Yes, I can also see that some chambers of commerce or trade associations have commented on this point. and I think, therefore, you should explain matters more clearly to them. On this issue, apart from toy manufacturers, we also have packaging material manufacturers. Can I first ask you whether you have received views from this trade or whether you are going to consult them? Earlier on, we issued the consultation paper. The public were able to comment on the consultation paper, and also we wrote to some dedicated trade associations, including those which import toys or who sell children's products, and also other trade associations as well. Certainly, some green groups were also contacted. On this point, we have not received any comments because they should know that our aim is not to regulate phthalates used in packaging materials. I have consulted the toy manufacturing trade myself. They identify with the proposal. They think that safety is important. But then if there is overregulation of packaging materials, they may want to advance a view. Especially for the packaging material manufacturers, they may not be able to comply with the new regulation. Since the packaging material may not come into contact with children, if you overregulate, there may be a small problem. So could I ask members here whether you would like the Bills Committee to invite those people to come and state their views at LegCo? Mr. Sin Chung Kai, let us extend the invitation, Chairman, so that we are assisted in scrutinizing the bill. We can invite the public. Are we overregulating or are we underregulating, or if they have other views at all? Mr. Wang Ting Kwang, I might like to differ from Mr. Sin. By advancing the present amendments, we are not going to go beyond what other countries are doing. We are not being more strict. In fact, we are just trying to dovetail with international regulations. And we just want to do our part. Hong Kong toy merchants actually do not operate factories in Hong Kong anymore. Many of them, in fact, many more, manufacture toys on the mainland. So I believe it is more a matter for my constituents, the importers. Chairman, your factory is also on the mainland, right? If you sell your toys in Hong Kong, those toys have to be imported into Hong Kong. So I rather think that we should think twice. In fact, the bill is not a complex bill. We have already lagged behind other people. The LegCo is heavily burdened with work. If we like to conduct a public hearing, that will take 8 or 10 days more. So since this is a simple bill, we might not want to have a hearing all the time. Now, if that's the case, I'd like to ask this question. After the bill is carried, how will regulation be done on the import level? Will it be that when we import these products, we have to provide a certificate by the testing agencies from the country of production? Or is it that we can do it by risk control, so you can random check and sample check the imported products, And if you should find any problem, then we can prosecute the relevant operators or order a recall. Can I please ask you about the regulation control measures? Alice. Thank you, Chairman. To answer Mr. Wong, what he said in the last part is correct. The enforcing agency is the Customs and Excise Department. After the bill comes into effect, the CNED, will do what it is doing by applying the standards that are now applying. They will, on a regular basis, purchase the products from different outlets and do testing. The testing will be done by the government laboratory, and if it's found that a product does not comply with the relevant safety regulations, they can be recalled, they could be banned, or there could be criminal prosecution taken out. We're going to do it that way. In other words, you are doing by way of risk control instead of requiring a certificate to accompany the relevant imports. Your understanding is correct. Let me also ask a simple follow-up. In Hong Kong, we have different standards when we export to the U.S. Chairman, why don't you take care of the question you asked us first, and that is about the public hearing? Well, I think this is related, because what I'm going to ask will shed light on whether we need a public hearing. If we export to the U.S., we have to comply with ASTM, and if we go to the EU, we have to comply with EU 71. Products or toys with these two marks can be imported into Hong Kong. In other words, we have to comply with ASTM and EN 71, and if you have these two logos printed on your products, then it means you're already complying with those standards, and sample checking will come only afterwards. Is that right? From what we know, the EU has a standard for phthalates, but they do it by way of an ordinance or a law. They do not just put it in the BSEN. Dr. Loy Kwok. Chairman, after all, in Hong Kong, we do not have a big domestic market. Toys and children's products, just like other products which are sold in Hong Kong, they are mostly imported. And basically, we already are on a par with international standards. That is the realistic situation. If the ordinance is to be amended, simply put, we just want to move ahead with the times. In other words, we mostly use products from the US, Japan, and the EU. We mostly use those brands of toys and children's products. Now, of course, these may not be manufactured in the US, EU, or Japan. As you know, many products are now manufactured on the mainland. But if they carry such logos, and if the factories or production lines are directly controlled by those companies, then I believe these products will already comply with international standards. I agree that our laws should move ahead with the times. But from another angle, we do not want to be stricter than the international standards, because if that's the case, no toys or children's products can be sold in Hong Kong. Therefore, in our ensuing discussion, we must be shown clearly the international standards and how we seek to adopt them for implementation in Hong Kong for the sake of moving ahead with the times. As to whether there should be a hearing with the trade, well, I think it doesn't harm matters, but I believe it will just be within the scope of what we are already discussing. I think I have a neutral stance on this, and in fact, I don't think it's absolutely necessary. But if members want to hear more voices, I think it doesn't harm matters.
Dr. Fernando Zhang. Thank you, Chairman. In relation to the bill, as I understand, the administration consulted the public towards the end of 2012 and the beginning of 2013. If this bill is about bringing us on a par with the standards in advanced country economies, I don't think we need a public hearing. So maybe we can invite the concerned groups to write in so that we can proceed with the bill scrutiny as soon as possible. I'd like to ask about the commencement date. And in your paper, you mentioned that there will be a grace period of several months. So please explain this point to us, Alice. Now, this is a two-step process. First of all, we need to expand the coverage of the bill, of the ordinance, and after scrutinizing the bill, once it's passed after the third reading, and depending on when it is passed, we can then work swiftly, because we are already we have already started drafting of the subsidiary legislation, and we can then table the subsidiary legislation, and and we will adopt the usual period of 28 plus 21, and then it will come into effect. Now, on the actual commencement date, this can be put in the subsidiary legislation. For example, we can push it back by 3 months, so that after 28 and 21 days, we can have a grace period of 3 months before the legislation actually comes into effect, so that the commencement date should be sometime around the first half of next year. Let's say there is a transition period of 3 months. The bill also applies to existing stock apart from import. Mr. Stephen Ho. Well, I also thought that public hearing would be appropriate. But since we are trying to keep up with other advanced economies, I think written submissions is also appropriate. Maybe we can call for public hearing if we receive strong responses from the written submissions. I think Dr. Fernando Zhang's suggestion is very good. I think at this stage we can invite the public to submit their written submissions. I understand that the industry doesn't have strong views on the updating of this legislation, because if they want to export their products, they need to comply with the EU or American standards, and we need to give them some time to make those changes. Now, we asked about packaging materials, and the Permanent Secretary already explained that in the bylaw, the requirements will be set out clearly on packaging materials. So I understand that members are not asking for public hearing, so we can invite the relevant associations to write in and submit their further views, and then we can start our clause-by-clause scrutiny. This is about children's product safety, and I think it is best that this ordinance can come into operation as soon as possible. So, date for the next meeting. Maybe we need some time to send out invitations and wait for submissions before we schedule for the next meeting. 2 weeks, is that sufficient? Chairman, these two methods can go in parallel. Of course, but members just now asked that we should send invitations for written submissions. No? So let's proceed with the clause by clause. I have some questions, Chairman. There's a table in Annex 2, or Annex B, rather. I don't quite understand this table. According to the U.S. standard, there are 2 columns. So please explain clearly to me. One is that each of the 3 phthalates should not exceed 0.1% by mass in children's toys and child care. And then the one below, it's about placing the product in the child's mouth. Can you explain the difference? Annex C or what? Annex B. Annex B should be. In fact, what we're going to do in the bill is that the regulation will be similar to what you're seeing in Annex B. There will be 2 categories. The regulation on these 6 types of phthalates may not be the same. The situation is similar in other countries. For the first 3 types, DEHP, DBP, and BBP, these 3 phthalates, according to experimental findings, it can be shown more clearly that these 3 phthalates affect the experimental animals more prominently, whereas for the remaining 3 phthalates, DINP, DIDP, and DNOP, the experimental findings are different from those for the first 3 types. So that's the approach adopted by Canada. If the first 3 types are banned, there is a concern that the latter 3 types would be used to replace the first 3 types, namely DINP, DIDP, and DNOP. The experimental findings for these 3 phthalates are not that clear, and yet, as a matter of safeguard or as a precautionary measure, concentration limits will also be imposed on these 3 types. So there are 2 sets of concentration limits on these 6 types of phthalates. For the first 3 types, as long as they exist in toys and children's products, the combined weight of these 3 phthalates should not exceed 0.1% by mass. For the remaining 3 types, as they have lower toxicity, according to, or that the test results are not that conclusive, the limits will only be imposed on toys that can be placed in the child's mouth. Say if the piece of toy is so large that it cannot be put in the child's mouth, then no limit will be imposed on the content of DINP and DINP and DNOP. So, for example, for a piece of toy, if limits were only imposed on the parts or the toy components which can be placed in a child's mouth. Yes, you can put it this way, because for different toys, they may come in different shapes and sizes, and the component that can be put in the child's mouth would be subject to the limit. Well, perhaps let me explain it this way. In hard plastics, the level of these phthalates are very low. These are plasticizers. For the first 3 types of phthalates, they are very rarely used nowadays. Because they are cheaper in price, they are usually used in commodities that don't come easily with human contact, and they have already been replaced by the latter three types. However, in PVC products, you can still find these phthalates. The law is that if the phthalates exceed the limit, you cannot export the commodities to the countries concerned. And for manufacturers, they would always use the strictest standard in manufacturing the goods. Is that clear, Mr. Sin? Chairman, may I suggest we look at Annex C instead of Annex B? It may be easier for us to understand. For Annex B, there are several countries. For Annex C, I think it is clearer. The first type being toys. I have a follow-up question, Chairman. This is my observation. In Annex B, European Union, US, Canada, Singapore, the wording is different. One is by mass, one is of the vinyl, and one is products. And then we have another concept by weight. So mass and weight is different in science. So can you explain this to me? By mass means by weight. By mass means by weight. Well, say this to scientists. Weight is not the same as mass. You're creating a new concept. You're creating something new. I think it's just a matter of wording. British and American, they have different wordings, but the meaning, as I understand it, is the same, according to Alice's explanation. Do we need some legal advice, Mr. Allen Leung? Dr. Lo Wai Kwok. Chairman, of course there are different definitions. For mass of a matter, it means the weight, the discounting the effect of gravity. So depending on the height from the ground, the object might carry a weight slightly different. So I think I'm making an academic point here. Well, but my point is, why aren't we using the standard already adopted by other countries, and instead we're creating a new concept? We're following two different provisions. Well, Chairman, the matter is very simple. I don't see any country using the word weight. EU, US, Canada, Singapore, all says by mass. So why are we creating a new concept instead of using other standards? Well, in the EU's guidelines, they make it clear how the calculations should be done. But if the member think that there is great concern over the word mass, so please rethink this point. In the table, I see EU, US, Canada, Singapore, they all use the word by mass. And yet you use weight, so there must be a strong reason for you to do so. I think weight is easier for people in Hong Kong to understand.
When we talk about weight, we usually use it for net weight or gross weight. We usually don't say gross mass or net mass. I think weight is also very commonly used. I don't see this as a major problem. All right, Mr. Allen Leung. I don't think it's a major problem, but it can be debated. Actually, I'd like to ask another question about Annex B. If you read this table, when we legislate to implement the standards of EU, US, Canada, and Singapore into Hong Kong, what about products or toys produced in Australia? Does it mean those have to be tested in Hong Kong? Or is it that toys produced in Australia cannot be imported into Hong Kong? Because comparatively speaking, the regulation on DBP, etc., by Australia, I think the control is not so strict. I'd like to ask about the objective consequence. Alice. At present, Hong Kong uses two major standards, but different countries also have different standards. I'll ask the administration to respond to the question from Mr. Alan Leong. As we said, we will not ban toys imported from Australia, but we are going to do sample checking of high-risk products. If we have a new law coming into effect, the CNED will step up the random checking. We will not ban everything from Australia. Chairman, you are an expert in this. I'd like to know that since Australia is different from the other countries, is it that the Australian productions are just meant for Australian children and they are not exported? Well, my understanding is that if they are exported, the imported country will certainly ask that those products comply with the standards in the importing country. And if these toys are imported into Hong Kong, they have to comply with our standards before they can be imported. And the importers have the responsibility to make sure that the imported products comply with Hong Kong laws. That is the responsibility of the importer, and this carries criminal liability. The CNED will sample check the products without informing the importers. The CNED can always take one or two such products for checking. This is what I think is happening. That will continue, Chairman. After the law comes into effect, the effort would still be more focused. That I understand, Chairman. But I like to point out that the objective consequence or effect will be that after our amendments to this Toys and Children's Product Safety Ordinance, the objective effect will be that Australia-produced toys and children's products can either not come into Hong Kong, or we should have stepped up checking. Because according to Annex B, these products, I think, cannot come into Hong Kong if they only comply with the minimum standard in Australia. I don't think they can possibly comply with the new law in Hong Kong. It will be up to the enforcement agency to work even harder. Right. Chairman, yes, Dr. Fernando Zhang, I'd like to follow up on this issue of law enforcement. My understanding is the mainland is not adopting the same standards yet. I have read reports saying that they may be manufacturing two types of products. Some products are meant for export to the EU and the US, and these will comply with those standards. But then, if they are just for domestic consumption, the products may not comply with the same standards. And those products may pose risk to children. Would those products also be imported into Hong Kong? We are worried that there are grassroots families in Hong Kong which would go for less expensive toys for their children. So the comparatively cheaper toys or children's products which are for sucking or used by babies, would they have a chance of coming into Hong Kong? I'd like to ask you about the regulation approach. You mentioned high-risk products. You say you would work harder on those. What do you mean by high-risk products? And how harder will you work? Are you talking about checking once every year by taking a product out of the market? What will be the frequency of such random checks? Alice, I will kick off and then I'll ask the CNED to give you the details. As I said, on a regular basis, the CNED follows a mechanism. Even now, there are many types of toys and children's products and other consumer products for that matter. And there is a mechanism for the CNED to sample check different products for testing. Our thinking is, because of this new law on plastic sizes, we have to do a few things. In our preparation for the bill, the CNED has started to check toys in the market. And if there is an exceedance of phthalates, we still cannot prosecute them because we do not have the law yet. However, the CNED will start to issue warnings and advice to tell them that a new law will be coming on soon. We will do more publicity, hoping that, first of all, the public will get to know there is a new law and what the effect will be. We're going to mount more publicity so as to arouse the public's awareness. The CNED will also talk to trade associations, including importers, hoping to let them know that there is a new law and that they should not import substandard products. This is what will happen, but the CNED can give you details on sample or random checking. Thank you, Chairman. Mr. Chan, yes. The CNED works by a regular law enforcement mechanism to sample check toys and children's products sold in the market. In 2011 and 2012, we have done 135 inspections every year, and then in 2011, there were 23 samples checked, and then in 2012, 3 samples. And then in the first 9 months of this year, we have stepped up our effort by checking 460 toys and children's products. And we have particularly looked at 95 products. And when the law is passed, we will even step up our efforts further. Mr. Chan, are you referring to just toys and children's products? Yes. Yes, we have acted under the Toys and Children's Product Safety Ordinance, and we have arrived at those figures. You said just now you would particularly look at high-risk products. What do you mean? What do you mean by high-risk products? In terms of risk control, we must be aware, first of all, of the relevant reports in advanced countries vis-à-vis recall of products. And we base on our experience in law enforcement to identify products for focused inspection. And on a quarterly basis, or actually if there are special festivals like the Mid-Autumn Festival or Halloween, specific products will be produced for the market, and we will also check those. And we also do risk control on a district level. We go to the main department stores and also small shops. We check products from the risk control angle. Let me ask a simple question. Is it that you focus more on toddlers' products, meaning products for children under 4 years old? Is it that you would spend more efforts on such toys and products? Because children under 4 years old do not actually choose their toys. Chairman, can I supplement? The answer is in the affirmative. After the ordinance and schedules come into effect, I would refer to high-risk products on a district basis. We would actually go more for street stalls and small shops. It is not that we don't go to the big shops, but Dr. Zheng these are exactly what we want to look at, because we may not know how these products are imported into Hong Kong, and they may not be selling toys and products from large corporations. And when there are special festivals, we would step up our inspection even more. Can I follow up? If you find a problem, say if the level is exceeded, how will you trace the responsibility? Who are the people who will be penalized? Is it the retailer or the supplier or the importer? How will you distribute responsibility? I think everybody, right? Everybody who is involved. Yes, you are correct. The retailer, the distributor, and the even wholesaler and importer, everybody will be held responsible. Mr. Sin Chung Kai, Chairman, when you do sample checking, you said you would also go to the larger corporations. But from a risk control angle, I think you should concentrate on the grassroots sellers. Is that right? So how much of your effort is put into checking the smaller shops, which I believe pose a higher risk? In fact, in Hong Kong, there are many areas where there are a lot of toys outlets. Do you concentrate on those areas? Can I defer to my colleague, Mr. Mack? Yes, Mr. Mack. When we do random checking, we certainly would not concentrate on the department stores or large corporations. But as Dr. Zhang and Mr. Sin were saying, we actually go to the small outlets in the streets. Very often, because of a lack of manpower, and also because of a lack of product knowledge, they may be selling higher risk products. Can you let me know which areas you are talking about? I think there are so-called hot spots, or black spots for that matter. Do you know where they are? We know, say for example, in Wan Chai, Sham Shui Po, these are the hot spots where there is a concentration of small operators. Any other questions? If not, let us go into clause-by-clause examination of the bill. DS? Yes, Chairman. Thank you. Clause 1, short title and commencement date. Mr. Sin asked about the commencement date. We are going to announce it by a notice published in the Gazette. Clause 2. We will amend sections 3 to 17 of Cap 424. This is a clause 2 of the bill. Yes, okay. If there are no questions, we come to the actual amendments. Clause 3 amends section 2, interpretation. The amendments are in clause 2. We already had a definition of children's product in the ordinance, which is narrow. It only points to a product specified in column 1 of Schedule 2. But as we said, we'd like to expand the applicability of the ordinance. So the definition of children's product, as in the ordinance, will be repealed, and we are going to replace it or substitute it by children's product, see section 2B. When we come to section 2B, we will see a new definition of children's product. 3(2) continues to amend section 2 of the ordinance, and this is the definition of commissioner. This is really a technical amendment only.
係啊，我諗唔好咁快住先嚇。
WK, just pause a moment here. Are we using the marked up copy? What is unchanged here in relation to interpretation is toys, which means A, a product or material that is designed or clearly intended for use in play by a child, or B, the packaging of that product or material. That comes back to the point we discussed about packaging. So when we come to other provisions in the bill, I'd like to clarify this point. Will the definition of toy contain the packaging as well? Now, interpretation under section 2, packaging is included under the definition of toy because regardless of the number or the quantity of or the limit present in toys and children's products, they are required to abide by the standards as set out in Schedule 2 of the new ordinance. So, in the existing ordinance under interpretation, packaging is included in the definition, but that doesn't mean in the regulation to be prepared there will be a concentration limit on the packaging itself. So can we delete packaging here? Can we leave the packaging out here? Now this is the wording in the existing ordinance. If it's left out here, the difficulty is not about the upcoming regulation. Now there are standards contained in the schedule. The standards apply to packaging as well. So if in the ordinance the meaning of toy doesn't include the packaging, then they won't be subject to regulation at all. So for the actual concentration limit, we need to look at the schedule. Now, I understand that the industry does have views on packaging. So can we deal with packaging in the schedule? For toys, they should have one set of limit, but packaging should not be included. If it's included here, then it will be affected. The whole product will be affected, including the packaging. Can you think about this? The point raised by Dr. Low? Maybe I can further elaborate, and maybe I can also consider how the wording can be changed. But in short, we're talking about the scope of application of the ordinance. Broadly speaking, this ordinance applies to toys as well as the packaging of toys. If we don't regulate packaging, then how can this ordinance apply to the product? So packaging should also come under the scope of application. But when we come to the actual limit or the actual standards to be applied, you can then read schedule. For example, it would be as broad as that the packaging should be safe, so on and so forth. What's important is how the schedule should be worded. Say, for example, baby's crib. There are several standards to be complied with. As for the actual regulation, they will be set out in the schedule. So please take note of this point, Chairman. That's my suggestion. When we come to the latter part of the bill, we can then come back to this point and see in terms of enforcement whether there are any uncertainties or ambiguities. I'm also concerned that if the scope doesn't include this part, then there may be problems. So yes, would members also take note that when we come to the schedule or the smaller regulations, we can then see how it is worded. As Eleanor. Now I'm reading the marked up copy. It seems that originally it's children's products in section 2. Now it is deleted and substituted by section 2b. And for section 2b, basically they have the same effect. Namely, A meaning the actual product itself, and B meaning the packaging of that product or material. In the latter part, well, where do you mean? I don't see anything under Schedule 2. That's why I said in the beginning that this is a two-step mechanism. What's problematic is the two-step mechanism. The subsidiary legislation has yet to be completed. I can't prepare the schedule and table it now because only 12 children's products are included in the schedule of the existing ordinance. So we need to widen the scope. DS, please have faith in us. We're not trying to stall the progress, but the point is we are taking a broad brush approach, and it is suggested that we just take note of this matter and decide on smaller matters later. So when is later? After passage of the bill? I think it would be more meaningful if you also submit the subsidiary legislation to us as well. Understood. Yes, members have already expressed their views on the packaging of toys, so I think it should be dealt with before the conclusion of this committee's work. Now, the regulation is still being prepared at the moment. It's still being drafted, and we will consider how the details can also be provided to members. The substance will be shown to members. So according to the marked up copy, children's products will be deleted, and so there is a change in the interpretation. The next part is about children's product standard. Again, because of the change in children's products definition, the children's product standard no longer apply. So let's move on. Next part, regulation. We're going to explain the definition of regulation in another way, so this can be done away with. Can you give us the page number? It's 002, page 002 in the Chinese version. Also in the English version, page 002. Thank you, Chairman. On the definition of regulation, I note that in 2010, it was added in a bill, in an amendment bill in 2010. The administration is proposing that it be deleted. I don't understand why it has to be deleted and how this definition of regulation will be expressed in another way. As I said just now, some may be more technical amendments. In clause 35, which we will come to later, it sets out the scope of the regulation, and that is why we don't need to include regulation under interpretation. I still don't quite understand. I understand our legal advisor's question. If you look at the marked up copy, originally, regulation is contained under interpretation. Now it's been deleted, is substituted by section 35. Why is it that in the past there was no regulation, now you have regulation? Is it? Do you mean to say that the original definition of regulation will become superfluous? Maybe I will invite our colleague to explain this. As I understand, in the amendment made in 2010, the word regulation appeared several times. To facilitate drafting or comprehension by users, at the time it was decided that a defined term would be used, that is to say, it would be put under interpretation in section 2. However, in this bill, we only need to use the expression regulation once or twice. Throughout the bill, I can see under the new definition of additional safety standards, or it only appeared twice. I mean, the word regulation only appeared twice. So the frequency is not that high. And we don't find it necessary to express the definition of regulation by way of wordings like regulations as set out in 35. So it is our opinion that we can just have for section 35 regulations instead of putting a definition of regulation under interpretation. So for the remaining provisions, is it the case that regulation, the word regulation doesn't appear at all? Because even if it appears once, you need to define it. Otherwise, the readers may not understand. If it only appears once, then usually, if necessary, we can provide a definition within the provision, or details would be set out in the provision. For example, for the newly added additional safety standards, we would put in an explanation of a regulation, meaning that it should be a regulation enacted in section 35. Chairman, I'd like to ask Ms. Hui, through you, where we're looking at. We're looking at C1501, page C1501 in the blue bill in the English version. What about the marked up copy? 003. Additional safety standard. So, in relation to a toy means an additional blah 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 under section 35. That's what you mean, all right? Chairman?
Regulation.
If the word regulation will not appear in any other place, I will accept this answer. Does it appear in any other place? From what I can recall, it doesn't. But I can go back and check. Okay, we still have not seen the subsidiary legislation. If that will be subject to negative vetting, then is this going to be seen again, the word regulation? Ms. Hui? If our objective is to talk about the new law itself, we will call it this regulation. And we will not say regulation made under Section 35. So it should not happen, or it should not appear. Chairman, if the foundation or basis of the argument is it will never ever appear again, then I can accept the logic. Now, but I find it strange. I don't know whether the legal advisor is on the same side. If you do it in such a complicated way and you have to make sure that the word regulation will not happen or appear in the subsidiary legislation, then why don't you just include the word or retain the word regulation in Section 2? I think that is so much easier, because you are not going to assist the user or reader very much. You just cross out the word regulation and you save a line and 6 words. But then whenever you need to mention regulation, you have to make use of another way to do it. So why use this approach? Why are you doing this? Let us listen to the legal advisor. Certainly, Chairman. I asked the question because I had the same or similar observation. The definition on regulation was only added in the last amendment exercise. This time around, when it is repealed or deleted, first of all, it would appear in the definition on additional safety standards, and then it will have to again describe the regulation as amended under Section 35. So I did not understand why it was added and now it is deleted. As Mr. Leong was saying, if you retain it, it will actually facilitate the making of future regulations. So I think it is better not to make this move. Ms. Hui? Thank you, Chairman. Actually, we have followed our drafting principles, and that is in the principal ordinance, if a term appears only once in a law, we usually will not include it under interpretation. Mr. Leong. So they are confirming that this will appear only once. Well, okay, in this regard, she is the expert. But, Chairman, I'd just like to register my concern. Mr. Chairman, if you look at it, if you look at the crossed out regulation definition, it means a regulation made under this ordinance. But later on, there may be other regulations to be made under the ordinance. How would you know that this will not happen? Right now, the administration might not be pondering other regulations, and this will be the only one. But what if there will be another one? Since there will be more than one, then you will have to revive it. Is that right? I am not comprehending this, but, Chairman, as I said, drafting-wise, I should not say too much because Ms. Hui is the expert. I can only follow the advice of the expert, but I'd just like to minute my concern. Let us continue. Thank you, Chairman. Next amendment on page 3 of the marked up copy. The definition on commissioner. This is to improve the text. Right now, commissioner means commissioner of customs and excise, any deputy or assistant commissioner, blah, blah, blah. We believe it should not be and, but or. So this textual change. I am not reading the text, but I'd like to ask whether this is a common approach. In other words, commissioner includes so many people here. However, sometimes the public officer is defined as authorized officers. But here you talk about the commissioner, the deputy or assistant commissioner. And there could be chief inspectors in the C&E department, and they are regarded as the commissioner here. Is that right? Is this what you usually do? I think you're just tidying it up, but it appears to be rather strange. Sometimes you authorize some people to enforce some laws, say the smoking control office, and maybe inspectors and above can do the regulation, and these are called the authorized officers. But you seldom say that a commissioner is authorized and then the commissioner would include a big group of people. I think this is not a common approach, or is my understanding incorrect? Or is it that it has been here for a long time? I can defer to Ms. Hui in a moment. But as Mr. Sin has said, we're just tidying up the definition here. In this ordinance, commissioner is mentioned at many places, so we have to define it here. It is correct in that in many other laws we see the term authorized officers. And when this is mentioned, you would have to say commissioner or authorized officers. But since this is just a matter of definition, and if this has always been the case, we don't want to make major changes. We just want to tidy up the text. Would Ms. Hui like to supplement? Ms. Hui, Chairman. We are only making a technical change to the definition by changing the word and to or. I think what Mr. Sin is asking is why sometimes we define commissioner in this way, but at other times we only define it as the commissioner, deputy or assistant commissioner without the rest of the definition. And sometimes there is not even a definition. Is that your question? No, I did not ask a question. I made a comment. Objectively speaking, I think this is rather peculiar because usually in other ordinances, you would authorize some people at a certain rank. And these people may be people of the rank specified by the commissioner and who would enforce this ordinance instead of what you are doing here. Commissioner would mean commissioner or a lot of other people, so you cast the definition very wide. Why don't you go back and take another look? Because in many other ordinances, this may be happening as well. I think it's a very good point. Are you going to make changes to all the ordinances or only this one? Or are you going to keep all the rest? What is your exercise? What is the purpose? I think this is rather peculiar. It is not a matter about the commissioner or deputy commissioner, but I think members would like to tidy things up. I think members can see that here in Legislative we have seen many laws, and I think what I have seen would be the common approach, but what is seen here is a peculiar approach. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. Chairman, I have been in Legislative for 10 years. And when we studied other bills, which used the approach supported by Mr. Sin, but then some other colleagues have said that that would give the relevant officers too much power, and this would not do, that you would have to specify the ranks. Now you have so many different views at different times. According to Mr. Sin, does it mean in making future laws, we want to allow the head of department or any designated officers to be given the power? It seems you apply different standards. I think I can cite many examples. The ICSO. Okay, let me do it this way. I get your point. Well, I don't understand. People do one thing, you want them to change to another mode. You want to simplify matters. Yes, I always go for simple and streamlined approaches. Okay, about the nomenclature, etc. the DS can look at it. We can focus on the issue here. No, Mr. Wang Tingkwang has misunderstood my explanation. I think maybe I minced my words. Okay, fine. Never mind. Let us not dwell on this point. I understand what both of you are saying. But this is not the main point of the ordinance. We are not specifically attending to the issue of commissioner or his officers. Let us come back to the main thrust of the bill. I think the DS and Ms. Hui have got your points. They will go back and look at this. All right? Let us come back to the bill itself. On the same page, where you see a triangle, we are adding new interpretations. First of all, additional safety standards. This is not present in the ordinance. We have mentioned this in section 35 only, but here we mention toys and children's products. So here we want to make it clear by including a definition of additional safety standard under interpretation. A and B use the same wording. The only difference is in relation to a toy or in relation to a children's product. The additional safety standards are made under Section 35. And also Schedule 2 product and then Schedule 2 product standard. These two are added as well. Actually, we call Schedule 2 product as toy or as children product. But just now we have expanded the definition on children's product already. So we like to be clear about what we mean by Schedule 2 product. Okay, carry on. The next one. Next page. We follow the interpretation order. We are talking about different kinds of standards. Where you see the triangle, we have 2 capital A and 2 capital B. 2 capital A explains what is meant by a Schedule 2 product. In fact, it means the same thing as children product in the present ordinance. We say it is in column 1, including packaging. We understand your point on packaging, and we would say more about it in the subsidiary legislation. 2 capital B, what is children's product? At the beginning of the meeting, we mentioned a series of products used by children. Please take a look and see if you have any questions. Okay, just carry on. A legal advisor. Chairman. With regard to the proposed 2 capital B, bracket 1, bracket small b, and Roman 2, the Legal Services Division wrote to the administration to ask it to explain certain issues under this definition. Our letters are already in the Legal Service report, and that is CB bracket 2, 130, 13 to 1404. Members might like to refer to that reply from the administration, because we have seen that in this definition, in the new proposed definition for children's product, there are 2 requirements. The first one is that it has to contain plasticized material. This, of course, members will understand. And another requirement is that it is intended to facilitate the feeding, hygiene, relaxation, sleep, sucking or teething of a child under 4 years of age. We asked the administration about its legislative intent here, because under this definition, we are aware that if a certain product should contain plasticizers, and if they are used for the purpose of these uses, for example, gum soothers, or actually it is a biscuit for children who are growing their teeth. Actually, it is food, but it is also for teething purposes. And if coincidentally the manufacturer should put in some plasticizer into the biscuit, now of course it should not be the case, but nevertheless it is included. For example, we have heard that a certain type of milk tea produced in Taiwan would include plasticizers as well.
We also note that under this definition, even some pharmaceutical products to help children relax or sleep, if some merchants put in plasticizers in the products, then will they be included under the bill? And is it contrary to the intent of the bill? I also note that according to the administration's reply, pharmaceutical products and food should not be included under the bill. It is not the intent of the bill, and they would consider whether amendments should be made to exclude these two products. Thank you for raising this question. In terms of our policy, this bill doesn't regulate food or pharmaceutical products. These products are the scope of other pieces of existing legislation. Under interpretation 2B, we will consider improving the drafting to remove this ambiguity. Ms. Sit Ho. 2B, 1, B, and then Roman letter 2. The 6 functions: feeding, hygiene, relaxation, sleep, sucking, teething. Has any reference been drawn from literature and other economies? There are some smaller children's products that contain plasticizers, and they may be sucked or teethed or put into the mouth by a child. For example, some soft toothbrush, it can be put into the mouth, but it's not to facilitate feeding or hygiene or whatever. And for example, there are mugs for teaching children how to drink water. It should be included under sucking, right? But what about the cup itself? So would the administration please consider this point? Chairman, I'd like to ask about the Chinese text. The word relaxation in Chinese, 松弛, has been changed. What I'm concerned is that you might be trying to be pedantic and use words that are no longer in common usage nowadays. So this is just a typo. It's corrected, so no problem. The other point is about teething, or in Chinese, 长牙. The legal advisor looked up a few definite dictionaries, and I also looked up the word myself. Most of the time, the Chinese word 生牙 or 出牙 would be used. Especially in Cantonese, we say 出牙 or 生牙 to mean teething. So, what is the basis of using 長牙 in Chinese to mean teething? Alice. Well, for the word relaxation or 鬆弛 in Chinese, that it's a simple correction, and we'll do that. As for teething or 長牙 in Chinese, we are following the word the wording used by other countries, and for the functions mentioned, we just followed other countries' provisions. As for 長牙 or 生牙 in Chinese to mean teething, we will consider the legal advisor's view on drafting. Chairman, I suggest changing the word in Chinese from 長牙 to 出牙 to mean teething, because we've checked a number of dictionaries and only one used the word 長牙 to mean teething. So would the administration please explain to us on what basis they use the word 長牙 to mean teething? If it's a more prevalent usage, then I can be convinced. Otherwise, according to the information that I checked online and that checked by the legal advisor, I think the word 出牙 in Chinese is more appropriate. Thank you, Chairman. Ms. Ho also mentioned that the word 長牙 in Chinese to mean teething also appeared in a Chinese dictionary. We make this choice because the intent of the policy is about products that facilitate or to facilitate teething of children, or to relieve the children's discomfort at the teething stage. And that is why we believe that the word 長牙, meaning that the teeth is growing, that will be more appropriate to express the teething stage. On this point, if we use the word 出牙 in Chinese to mean teething, then my concern is that some may think the products might be for facilitating the children's teething, and that might narrow down the scope of application. Well, Chairman, you hear from the administration that she also used the word 出牙 in her expressions to mean teething. So that's also what you commonly use. That's also your choice. So 出牙 in Chinese can also mean the teething stage instead of a single moment in time. In English, it's teething. In Chinese, it's either 長牙 or 出牙. And I have an electronic dictionary here, and here it says teething and then bracket 出牙語齒 in Chinese. So it's very clear for adults. We don't need any gum soothers, etc. So of course, these products are for children under the age of 4. I'm not very familiar with legal drafting, but that's what I can see in the electronic dictionary. Chairman, I am concerned about one point. What does children's product include? Now, according to the interpretation in the English and Chinese text, well, indeed, the pharmaceutical products and food are not excluded, and I can't help but think about the restriction on the import of or export of formula milk. At the time when we scrutinized that bill, it was argued that it was hard to exclude the rice cereal from the definition, and I see that it is difficult to exclude food and pharmaceutical products from the definition. So perhaps you should add this bit that excludes food and pharmaceutical products. So maybe you can consider clarifying the definition. Thank you, Chairman. As I mentioned just now, we understand this issue. We want to avoid ambiguities as well. We are considering improving the drafting so as to remove this ambiguity. Yes, we will do that. Mr. Sin Chung Kai. Chairman, I think there are different approaches to it. Children below the age of 4, meaning what? It means children below the age of 3 years and 364 days. Mr. Wong Ting Kwong. I think in terms of the drafting, there is a discrepancy between the Chinese and English text, maybe because there is difference, a cultural difference. Now, in the Chinese text, sometimes our understanding is based on the Cantonese dialect of the Chinese language, and the usage may be different. So when we talk about teething, whether we should use 出牙 or 長牙 in Chinese, if we use the Orthodox Chinese or in 普通话, there is a difference between 出牙 and 長牙 in Chinese. I think in as far as the Chinese language is concerned, or at least in 普通话, the use of 長牙 to mean teething prevails over 出牙. Nobody used 出牙. So perhaps this is for the law draftsman to think about. We're in Hong Kong. Should we use the more colloquial Cantonese phrase 出牙 so that it's easier for people to understand? Or should we consider the usage in the whole of the Chinese community, whether we should use 長牙 instead? Dr. Loy Kwok said just now he checked electronic dictionary. I'd like to know whether it's the Cantonese dialect of the Chinese language. Well, I think both terms in Chinese are used. But I think Alice and Ms. Hui understand very well what the members are trying to say. So please go back to think about it. Whether you're thinking about Cantonese or Chinese language as a whole. No, the word 出牙 in Chinese is not just a colloquial term. In Cantonese, it also exists in written form. It's not a Cantonese dialect. All right, point taken. We have our discussion have covered the bill as well as the meaning of some Chinese terms, and we should not mince words. So for our members' reference, Baidu encyclopedia. Now, in Chinese, there is also this term 出牙 to mean teething. So it seems that be it Cantonese dialect or the Chinese language as a whole, this term is used to mean teething. So to my understand, when I communicate with mainlanders, I also use the word 出牙 to mean teething.
咁我哋繼續落去。
Please continue. Yes, please continue. The next part is about children's product. Part 3. Because in Schedule 2, all along we are referring to children's products, so we have changed the heading to mean Schedule 2 products must comply with Schedule 2 product standards. And
Section 5, bracket 1, we have expanded bracket 1 so that it becomes clearer because in the original 5(1) it says that a person must not manufacture, import, or supply a children's product unless the product complies with all the requirements contained in at least one children's product standard that is specific to the product. Now we have changed it. We have expanded 1 into 1 and 1A to clarify that if there is only one set of standards in Schedule 2, then the product will have to comply with all the requirements of that set of standard. And in 1A, it says that if there is more than one set of product standards, then it should comply with at least one of those standards. In fact, the meaning remains the same, but only an improvement in the writing. Okay, that is why in bracket 3 and 4, we have to add back and subsection 1A or subsection 1A. Please continue. Sure. Next page. Part 4. General safety requirement. We like to expand this as well to say general safety requirement and additional safety standard. The law does authorize the making of additional safety standards. We just like to clarify this in the title of this part. 8(1). Again, it is a textual improvement. By changing the wording, it carries the same meaning. Any additional safety standard established by regulation is now changed to an additional safety standard. That is for manufacture, import, or supply of a toy or children's product. Is it that you always use the word 某玩具 for a toy? Yes. We refer to one toy. I'm asking you for the sake of consistency. Yes, that is what we're going to do throughout the entire amendment bill. 8(4). The same thing. We want to state clearly that a Schedule 2 product is the same as the one in 5(1). In other words, if there is just one standard, then it should comply with all the requirements of that standard. If there is more than a standard, then you would have to comply with at least one of those standards. It is consistent with the previous enactment. I'd like to ask a question. When you say 某玩具 for a toy, is it the same as 該玩具? When you mention it for the first time, you should say 某玩具, and then if you mention it for a second time, you refer it back to the first toy, then you use 該玩具. But I can see both Chinese words being used. I just like to clarify it. Sure, thank you. Next. Section 9, page 8 of the marked up copy. We are making amendments to 9(2) and (3). This is about the commissioner requiring tests to be done. We are changing the way it is written, but the meaning remains the same, the policy remains the same. These are all technical amendments so that, especially in the Chinese text, it would read better. Now we come to Section 11. Section 11 is on page 9. Yes, Mr. Sin, you are specifying that it should be the government chemist. Is it that there are no other authorized chemists in other organizations? My understanding now is that if the government chemist doesn't do it, other chemists in the private market would be approached. Those are to be regarded as the government chemist if the work is farmed out. What is your view, Alice? I know that many of the tests are not done at the government lab. Can I defer to the C&E department, please? In actual practice, sometimes the government laboratory cannot do certain tests, and we would ask authorized chemists outside the government lab to do it. Lo Wai Kwok, if that's the case, Chairman, then under bracket 3, the Commissioner may have tested by the government chemist. Shouldn't you expand it by saying or other chemists? So there is the flexibility for the Commissioner. Because what you are saying here may not be totally legal. You say the government chemist may not be able to do all the work and you farm out the work to other chemists. Is that going to be lawful? Because you are not including any chemist designated by the Commissioner. Chairman, how should I put it? If CNED asks other labs to do the tests other than the government lab, it should not be a problem. But under bracket 3 here, whether we should specify the government chemist or should you say chemists in Hong Kong who are at a certain standard? I'd like to ask you whether what you are doing is lawful. Because if you look at the original construction, it says the Commissioner may have tested by a government chemist a toy that is seized under Section 20, etc., etc. People are not challenging you, but you say that the government lab may not be able to take up all the workload and you ask other chemists to do it. People can challenge you in court because that is not a government chemist. Maybe you are not challenged at the moment. Does it say anywhere in the ordinance that if a test is not done by the government chemist, but by a chemist authorized or approved by the government chemist, then what Mr. Sin is saying has a point then? Mr. Wong Ting Kwang? I like the Bureau to clarify this for the sake of my understanding. Section 9, laboratories. You have 1, 2, and 3. You have the subsections. You should also look at subsection 1. Approved laboratory. It means a laboratory approved in writing by the Commissioner for Innovation and Technology for the purpose of testing toys and children's products. This is already in subsection 1. So the section includes an approved laboratory which is approved in writing and which is not the government lab. And brackets 2 and 3 should be read together with bracket 1 because they're all under section 9. We should take them all together. Can I ask the question? We can ask our legal advisor whether we should read the section in this way. Chairman, the member has asked whether it must be the government lab or whether other labs are included. If I look at the entire section 9, it states clearly that in this section and sections 24.4b and 25.4, approved laboratory means a laboratory approved in writing by the Commissioner for Innovation and Technology for the purpose of testing toys and children's products. And then Mr. Sin referred to a subsection under the same section. However, I am aware that the government chemist is mentioned, and this is in capital letters. But then there is no definition of government chemist in the ordinance. Just now, Mr. Wang Ting-kwang pointed out correctly that a laboratory is defined, but Mr. Sin was referring to the chemist, a government chemist. So perhaps the administration can clarify what the actual operation is. Chairman, let me explain. There are two things. 9(1) talks about approved laboratories. This refers to 9(2) when it says any person can foot the bill and ask tests to be done by an approved laboratory, because no persons can require the government lab to do tests. So the approved laboratory actually is related to Section 2, a person. And as for Mr. Sin's point, our understanding is that in subsection 3, the commissioner may have tested by the government chemist, blah, blah, blah. And it should not rule out the commissioner requiring other people to do it. I understand Mr. Sin's concern. Let me go back and take this up with the CNED to see how this should be stated in the law. But the approved laboratory only relates to Section 2. If you look at 24B and 25(4), approved laboratory is mentioned, and this may relate to court action. But as it is written, and if you ask me, the literal meaning does not include other people. I cannot see how you can explain this away to say this will include chemists in approved laboratories, that you would accept the test results by other chemists in approved laboratories. We understand your concern. Let us go back and study the issue. We can answer you at the next meeting. Okay, I think it is almost time today. Next time we will carry on, and the questions asked by members, including interpretation of terms or wording, etc. Alice, please let us know your answers and also your decisions. The next meeting, let us check the availability of venues and also members' time slots. We will also have to see whether the administration will be ready. Venues are in short supply nowadays. We will have to check the availability of venues. We'll try to do it as soon as possible. But you have to give time to the administration to get ready. Yes, if they are ready early, then we can have our meeting early. Sure.